You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Donald Trump and Republicans did all they could to lie about the 2020 election. Oh, we can run them all. Trump, Kevin McCarthy, they all were lying when it came to the election. Now Republicans in Georgia and other states are going to do their damnedest to actually steal the election in 2022 and 2024. This is a huge issue. But the question is, are Democrats going to have the guts to move forward with the John Lewis voting bill? They could actually do that, use their power to prevent Republicans from doing this on the state level. Joining us right now is Ari Berman. He, of course, is with Mother Jones. He is a senior reporter there, has been focusing on these issues for a long time. Ari, glad to have you in Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is critically important. Republicans can control these legislatures in these southern states. They control the governor's mansions as well. And so they control the state Supreme Court. So the only real way for Democrats to stop the steal, if you will, is if they enact the John Lewis Act on the federal level, because that is what is needed. The question is, will they have the guts to move forward and get it done immediately?
That's right, Roland. The Republicans control the states. They control places like Georgia, and they are hell-bent on trying to make it harder to vote so there isn't a repeat of 2020. So there isn't the same kind of turnout, particularly among younger voters, black voters, voters of color, that there was in 2020 in future elections. So Republicans control the states, but Democrats control Washington, meaning they have the power, finally, to put in place federal standards and federal regulations for voting. They can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to restore the Voting Rights Act, and they can pass the For the People Act, which would be the most significant democracy reform bill in a generation. Now, the only way they can do that is to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, because these bills are not going to get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate, but they could easily get 50 votes in the U.S. Senate. Every Democrat votes for it. So that's the big question. Are they willing to get rid of the filibuster, which President Obama called a Jim Crow relic, in order to stop all of these new voter suppression laws? If they're not willing to do that, then it's going to be very, very difficult for them to fight these voter suppression laws through the state legislatures or through the courts.
So how will the federal bill, how will that protect voting rights? How will that, I won't say invalidate, but how will that keep the Republicans in these southern states from stealing the election through voter suppression?
So with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, states that have both a long but also more recent history of voting discrimination, like Georgia, would once again have to approve their voting changes with the federal government. So the Justice Department would now have the power to block new restrictions on voting. Georgia is talking about doing things like getting rid of no excuse absentee voting, where everyone in Georgia can vote by mail, getting rid of automatic voter registration, adding new voter ID requirements. These are all things that would be discriminatory, that would violate the Voting Rights Act. And if there was teeth, once again, put in the Voting Rights Act, you could block those laws that way. There's also legislation, the For the People Act, that would set federal standards for federal elections. It wouldn't allow you to do discriminatory voter purging. It wouldn't allow you to add new voter ID laws. It wouldn't allow you to add these kind of discriminatory changes. So these bills really work hand in hand. The For the People Act would add standards that apply to all 50 states, whereas the John Lewis Voting Rights Act would target those states that are the worst offenders when it comes to voting rights, places like Georgia. And so if those federal protections are put in place, and if they're put in place soon, they would then apply to the 2020 and the 2024 elections. And Democrats would actually have power to stop these new voter suppression laws, as opposed to trying to just litigate against them after the fact, which is very, very difficult when you're dealing with very conservative courts that we have right now.
But you've got folks like West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who says under no circumstances will he consider getting rid of the filibuster.
He says that now. I think what the Democratic leadership is thinking is that if Republicans obstruct enough bills, then Joe Manchin and also Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona might reconsider. But there's a lot at stake here. First off, there's power for the Democratic Party at stake. If Republicans are allowed to pass all of these new voter suppression laws, all of these extremely gerrymandered maps, that's going to hurt the Democratic Party. That might cost them the House in 2022. That might cost them the Senate. That might cost them the presidency. So it hurts the Democratic Party, but more broadly, it hurts democracy. We saw record turnout in the 2020 election, and that's the very thing that the Republican Party feels threatened by. So if I'm Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona and I see that there's record turnout in my state, and suddenly all of these efforts are being put in place to try to roll back that kind of turnout, the same kind of turnout that helped elect me. And I'm thinking, do I want to save American democracy, or do I want to save the filibuster so that 41 Republican senators can block any legislation proposed by the Democrats? I don't think this is a very difficult call for them.
And in fact, when you talk about Sinema, she needs to be focused on this because the Supreme Court has taken up an assault on Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And so that could very well affect her state.
That's absolutely right. The Supreme Court is going to hear a case from Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema's home state, that could be make it harder to vote in that state. There's all sorts of crazy bills that have been introduced by Arizona Republicans already. They want to get rid of no excuse absentee voting in a state where 80% of the people vote by mail. They want to dramatically close a number of polling places, even while they make it harder to vote by mail. So in Maricopa County, Arizona, they want to go from having 100 vote centers in Maricopa County, where you can vote anywhere in the county, to having only 15 voting centers. That's going to directly affect someone like Kyrsten Sinema. There's another bill in Arizona that would just say that the legislature can appoint whatever electors they want in the presidential election, no matter what the voters of the state say. So this is crazy stuff for democracy, but it also threatens Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly's self-interest as Democrats. They need large turnout from young voters, from voters of color, to be able to win elections. And if those things are rolled back, it's going to be bad for democracy, but it's also going to be bad for them as well. So from a purely self-interest perspective, you'd think they'd want to get rid of the filibuster. But I just think it's fundamentally undemocratic when 41 senators can block anything that's supported by a huge majority of Americans, and then that paralyzes the Congress from being able to do anything about attacks on democracy. So one anti-democratic institution, the filibuster, is then allowing you to continue all of these other anti-democratic institutions like voter suppression at the state and federal level.
But this is where, again, where for me, I've always had a problem with Democrats not having guts. Republicans have no problem changing rules to drive their agenda. Mitch McConnell can complain and bitch and moan all day about Senator Harry Reid changing the rules for these lower-level judges once. McConnell did it twice, including the Supreme Court.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that's why it was so ridiculous to hear Mitch McConnell talking about preserving the filibuster. He already got rid of the filibuster to confirm Neil Gorsuch, to confirm Amy Coney Barrett. So they have no problem. They don't care about hypocrisy. They don't care about shamelessness. All they care is exercising power. And I've said this for a long time. Democrats have to be as aggressive about fighting voter suppression as Republicans are at doing it. And they're not there yet. And the fact that the Democrats are not on board yet with getting rid of the filibuster is very, very worrisome, because democracy is at stake right now. We are seeing it play out in the states. We just had an election where a big lie was said for months that led to a violent coup at the U.S. Capitol. And now Republicans are trying to take up that big lie through other means. They're trying to accomplish through legislation what they couldn't accomplish through litigation. And Democrats need to be very, very serious about what's happening in front of them and realize that this is their moment to pass big transformative change, including a new Voting Rights Act. If they don't do it now, they might never get another chance to do it anytime soon.
And in fact, here's the other piece. If Democrats don't do this, they're going to get killed in 2022. Because here's the deal. You can't spend all this money and go out here telling people, let's get John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock in the United States Senate for us to be able to control it, and then you don't do a damn thing with it. Then you play this game of, no, let's bipartisanship, let's all get together. No, as it stands right now, it's 50-50. you can run the table on your agenda. And if the other side starts yelling and screaming, all you got to say is, I'm going to show you the hand, because y'all gave us the finger for 4 years when Trump was there. That's how you wield power. And if you don't wield power, you're going to piss off the very people who went out there and sacrificed themselves, tempted COVID, stood in line, because they're going to say, what the hell we do all that for if y'all not going to do anything with the power?
Well, that's absolutely right. In Georgia, Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff were very, very clear. They said over and over, send us to Congress so we can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I think it's going to be very hard for them to go back home and say, well, we wanted to pass it, but there's this thing called the filibuster and Republicans wouldn't let us. No, you were elected to Congress with a mandate to do this. John Ossoff didn't have an asterisk under his tweets about a new Voting Rights Act that it could then be blocked by 41 Republican senators. So Democrats have to realize they have a mandate, and they have a mandate for big structural democratic change after an election that Republicans tried to steal. And now they're already trying to steal the next one. And if they don't deliver, democracy is going to be undermined, and it's also going to hurt them with their own voters. So I really think there's no reason for them not to do this. People are always saying, well, if you eliminate the filibuster, Republicans could come in and they could pass bad laws. Well, guess what? Republicans are going to do that anyway. If Republicans want to get rid of the filibuster, they will get rid of the filibuster. They've already gotten rid of it for Supreme Court nominations. They've already rammed things through, like tax cuts for the rich under Trump with 51 votes. So they will do whatever it takes to control power. And Democrats, when they have power, have to use it, or else democracy will suffer, and they will suffer as well.
Ari Berman with Mother Jones. We still appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.